Welcome to I'd Print That. I'm Joe, and this last week has been pretty much the same as any others lately. Work's been keeping me busy, and I've been finding some time in the evenings to do a little bit of 3D printer-y things, and even get some time in to learn some Fusion 360. As far as things that I have accomplished this week, I have made a few GoPro mounts for the Me Creator 2. I've got those printed out. I'm giving them some test runs to see what they're like. So with any luck, those should be available here by the end of the week. I do have somebody who I'm going to be sending those to so they can give them a print and a test just to get some feedback before I kick them off to the wild. In addition, last night my wife was using the treadmill and came downstairs to see how she was doing, and she was watching some TV via the Chromecast and looking for some sort of way to have a phone holder on her treadmill. We have an older treadmill, so it doesn't have any of the new fancy like cup holders, phone holders, or any type of holder for that matter on it. So I spent about 30 minutes and designed up a quick phone holder for the treadmill, printed that out. Turned out pretty good. I got a minor modification I would like to make to it, but all in all, it actually holds it in vertical and horizontal position. Don't know if I'm going to release it on Thingiverse because our treadmill is ancient, and most people probably won't be able to use this thing, but I'll see about getting some pictures posted online. It's just kind of a cool little project for me to throw together pretty quickly. Designed it in SketchUp. I know I've been using Fusion 360, but I'm still learning the ins and outs of that. Been going through their online classes, their tutorials, and it's a pretty in-depth program. It can do a lot of things that SketchUp just can't do. And I'm actually kind of liking it. Yeah, it's to the point now where I need to get into some more advanced things. Designing is definitely different than how it's done in SketchUp. I'm going to probably take a little bit while longer to really get comfortable with the program, but if I can manage to get used to it, it should be my design program of choice from this point forward. It's very powerful. Like I said, it's got a lot of cool little features, and one of the nice things is the ability to set constraints. That way, if you need to ever resize your model, you don't have to go in and move everything else around. You can set those to fixed points or fixed locations, and when you resize it overall, those things either stay in place or they resize accordingly when the size is increased or reduced. Pretty awesome. I still do plan on making the tool holder for the Me Creator 2, but again, that's really once I get more familiar with Fusion 360, I will then go ahead and make that tool holder. I think it's going to come out pretty good. I've got some really good ideas for it. It's just getting familiar with the software. Made comment last week. Time has expired to get the last month's print of the month, which was the Mario 1-Up mushroom. However, if you become a patron donator of $5 this month, so by the end of the month, you'll receive the new print of the month, which is a Cthulhu pendant. For all of you H.P. Lovecraft fans out there, there's a fair number of things that you could do with this nice little pendant. I will go ahead and get some pictures posted of those, and I'll post a link to that model on the blog. One thing we try and do is to really help new users get familiar with their printers. And we've talked in the past about different types of extruders, direct drive and Bowden extruders. So for those of you that do own an FDM 3D printer, I know that each of us at some point have encountered issues with your extruders. So some of the common problems that you can have are under extrusion and over extrusion. Under extrusion is when not enough filament comes out of the nozzle and it causes gaps in the print layers, or just it does not extrude filament at all. Over extrusion is the opposite. It forces too much filament through the nozzle, giving you uneven print layers, blobs of excess filament, and other things that just make your print look really off. And to understand what causes these things to happen and how to prevent it from happening, or even fix an existing problem, we need to go over the different types of extruders, how they work, and even how to calibrate their flow. If you're a new user, you may not know what an extruder is, and that's okay. That's why you're listening, is to learn these things. The extruder is the part of the printer that pushes filament through the nozzle onto the build platform, which then begins building up the layers of your print. Extruders are divided into two sections, a hot end and a cold end. The cold end is typically comprised of a gear, a bearing, and a stepper motor, which physically moves a filament into the hot end. In the hot end, filament passes through a melt area, which melts the plastic, and then it is forced out the nozzle. In FDM printing, there are two main types of extruders, direct drive and Bowden. While both setups function similarly, each one comes with their own set of advantages and disadvantages. Direct drive extruders are usually located above the hot end with only a small space in between. This keeps the distance a filament needs to travel from the cold end to the hot end at a minimum. The advantage of this style extruder is that it makes retraction easier and can lead to improvements in print quality. Retraction is when the extruder pulls filament backwards away from the nozzle so it doesn't ooze while moving across an open space. Direct drive extruders require less retraction than Bowden extruders to prevent oozing and stringing. We'll talk about oozing and stringing more here in a few minutes. The biggest disadvantage of having the extruder so close to the hot end is that the weight of the motor is on the carriage, which can cause issues when attempting to print quickly. The additional weight means your extruder and hot end may resist rapid changes in direction, which can cause an effect called banding, where some layers bulge outwards. This is where Bowden extruders have an advantage. Bowden extruders have a motor mounted away from your hot end, which is usually attached to the frame of the printer. This keeps all the weight off of the print carriage and allows for faster printing, but it does require that the filament travels a long way to reach the hot end. The retraction distance needs to be much longer than the direct drive counterpart to compensate, and it is nearly impossible to print flexible materials on any Bowden extruders because the filament may buckle along the filament path. So, how can you deal with under and over extrusion? The answer is easier than you would think. Because both of these are caused by the extruder feeding the wrong amount of filament, you need to adjust your extrusion multiplier in your slicing software. You can find the extrusion multiplier in most slicers. This setting is used to correct for over and under extrusion. A simple way to calibrate your extrusion multiplier is to disconnect the cold end from the hot end and tell your printer to extrude 100 millimeters of filament. Measure the amount of filament that is actually extruded and use that number to tweak the extrusion multiplier. The formula for your new extrusion multiplier will be 100 millimeters divided by the actual amount that it extruded, then multiply that by the original extrusion multiplier. There can be other causes for under extrusion and over extrusion, but we'll go over those at some other time in the future. This leads me into the first of a 3-part series on common printer errors and their fixes. We're still a ways off from being able to press a button and have a perfect 3D printed object within a few minutes or hours. While the technology has come a long way, every maker has and will run into challenges, and as a maker, you tinker to figure out how to fix it. In this series, we'll go over a few common errors that you may encounter and provide some possible adjustments in order to solve them. In part 1, we're going to talk about stringing and oozing. Now, what is stringing and oozing? This is caused when filament seeps from the nozzle and is dragged into place during non-print movements. This causes strings that look like thin webbing between your print, and can be time-consuming and a pain to remove. One reason this is happening is that your retraction settings are not set properly in your slicer program. Retraction prevents excessive material from being dragged from one area of the print to another, and then when printing resumes, filament will be pushed out the nozzle again. Now keep in mind that if your retraction settings are too high, it may clog your nozzle, so you should do some experimentation to find out what works for your printer and the filament that you are using. The retraction settings for Bowden and direct drive extruders are going to be different. With that in mind, those should be higher for Bowden extruders because there's more distance in between the nozzle and the drive gear where your filament feeds in. For direct drive extruders, the recommended setting is below 2.5 millimeters, since anything more can cause a jam. The recommended setting for Bowden extruders are between 1 millimeter and 5 millimeters. You should be able to adjust incrementally by 0.5 to find the best setting for your printer and the filament that you are using if you're having issues. Your retraction speed should also be set somewhere between 30 and 45 millimeters. Another solution to stringing and oozing is to adjust the travel speed for non-print moves. The slower your nozzle moves during these non-print moves, the more time it has for filament to ooze out. By speeding up the nozzle for these movements, you can help prevent stringing and oozing. To see a great example of how to experiment with retraction and nozzle speed, you can actually check out the series of test prints that Matter Hackers did to figure out the best settings to prevent oozing on their printer. They found out that 150 millimeters per second travel speed was ideal for their printer, but this will vary, so you'll want to play around with your settings. I will go ahead and make a link also within the blog post to that experiment that Matter Hackers did. And finally, one other thing that you could try and do is to adjust your nozzle's temperature. When the extrusion temperatures are set too high, filament will have a tendency to ooze from the nozzle. You should check the suggested print temperatures for the filament that you are using. This can vary a lot, not only between ABS and PLA filaments, but also can vary from one filament manufacturer to another. I have found that reducing the temperature by 5 degrees until you find the best results is optimal. I generally don't use increments of less than 5. I generally use whole numbers, 5s and 10s. If you're interested in checking the calibration and settings of your printer to see what they're like, I highly recommend going out to Thingiverse. There are several calibration prints that you can find there, and give one or more of them a try. When I'm trying new filaments, I generally try printing they have a 40 millimeter test cube out there. I will go ahead and print that at 50%, so it's a 20 millimeter cube. Once I'm comfortable with how the cube looks, making sure there's no sagging or any weird anomalies within the print itself, I'll then take and print, one of they've got a calibration octopus or a 3D benchy that you can try and print. That'll really let you know if your printer settings are proper or if they need a little bit of tweaking. That wraps up part 1. Part 2 will be about prints not sticking to your bed. I'll go ahead and cover that next week. And then the following week will be plastic overheating, which deals with the temperatures that you're printing at. Stay tuned for those. A lot more education coming your way. Past that, I do have one piece of news I want to share. This kind of goes back into Autodesk Infusion 360, which I've been trying. A couple months ago, after picking up an online 3D printing marketplace, Formlabs, the maker of the Form 1 SLA printer, has announced that it has raised $35 million in Series B funding. The round, led by Foundry Group, brings the company's total investment number up to $55 million. In the list of other investors, Autodesk is probably the most notable name of them all. Autodesk, a 3D design software giant, is using their investment as an opportunity to build a partnership with Formlabs, a deal that will develop collaborative software and marketing between the two companies. However, the specifics on what all of that will mean are still forthcoming. It's nice to see that Formlabs is getting additional funding. I'm still wanting to get one of their SLA printers to check out. I have actually had the opportunity to see one and some of the prints. That was up at the Makerspace in Sandpoint, Idaho, Maker Point. And I gotta say, the print looked pretty nice, and it was not as flimsy as I had expected. It was pretty rigid and looked really good. So, I think one of my next printers I would like to get, though I do have a couple of FDM printers actually lined up. I should be receiving those in a couple of months. I would like to at least get my hands on one or two SLA printers and give those a try and compare my experiences between SLA and FDM. So, talked a little bit about it last week. It has been an ongoing topic for a few months now, and that's Dead by Daylight. I've been playing more and more of the game, actually having time to do a few matches, and my experiences as a survivor, the game's difficult. It's fairly balanced, and here a couple of days ago they released their 1.0.5 patch, which actually included some changes to the way some of the killer mechanics work, especially some of their abilities. So they really dialed back on these because there was a lot of concern that a few of their abilities were very overpowered. And I gotta say, after watching some Twitch streams and playing the game myself, getting somewhere between, I think I got something like 20 hours into the game already, and yeah, they really need to make a couple of minor changes to the way the killer worked. Now, I can't say that I've played with the new patch, but of the streams I've been watching, it looks to have helped quite a bit. The game is still a killer-friendly game. So if you are a survivor, you're still going to have a difficult time. But some of the powers like Iron Grasp and No One Escapes Death have had some significant changes. No One Escapes Death, or as it's called, NOED within the community. The killer now has 120 seconds to find the survivors once all the generators are active and the doors are activated. They still get a speed boost, then they still have a one-hit down, but they have to do it within that 120 second timer, which makes it a little bit easier for killers or for the survivors to plan around. So they know if they don't want to necessarily blitz towards one of the two exits, they can try and be stealthy and wait that 120 seconds before they try and rush out the doors. Now, this isn't necessarily a strategy that you want to follow because killers do have an increased speed regardless. With No One Escapes Death, they can cover that map and find anybody trying to hide easier. The other one, Iron Grasp, has made it easier for the survivor to wiggle out of. I believe they made changes to tiers 2 and 3 and have left tier 1 alone. I'm excited to try to get some gaming done with this. I'll probably wind up getting on tonight. Again, if anybody is on Steam and wants to do a Survive with Friends, send me a message via the website. Go out to i'dprintthat.com. At the bottom, there's a little contact form. Go ahead and send me a message. Let me know what your Steam ID is, and I'd be more than happy to play some Dead by Daylight with you, or something else. Who knows? As always, I say it every week. If you like what we do, you find it interesting, go out, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, give us a like, give us a follow. Episodes are still being released every other day on YouTube. Right now, I believe we just released episode 20. So here in a couple weeks, we'll be all caught up. And with any luck, I will have my GoPro mounts perfected and get some time-lapse recordings overlaid on new releases. Won't happen for episode 30, which is what we're on now. Maybe 31, maybe 32, though. It's getting really, really close. I do have some other news that's podcasty related. I have been contacted by an individual regarding some intro and outro music. Currently working with him to see what we can come up with. So with any luck here in the next, again, week or two, so episode 31, 32 maybe, you may hear some nice intro music. I'm very excited. And finally, if you, besides giving us a like, a follow, a subscribe, if you want to help us out, help the podcast become better, you can go out to Patreon. We have the ability to do $1 and $5 a month subscriptions. If you do wind up doing the $5 a month subscription, as I said, you'll receive a print of the month for every month that you are a $5 a month patron. And this month is a Cthulhu pendant. If you don't feel like a flat monthly subscription, that's fine. On our website, we also have a place where you can purchase 3D printing supplies. Go to our website, i'dprintthat.com, click on the supplies menu at the top of the page, and you'll be presented with a whole bunch of hardware, tools, and other things for 3D printing. And if you are interested, at the very bottom of that list is non-3D printing stuff, which can be art supplies. Some of the art supplies could be helpful if you're looking at finishing, doing some finishing on 3D prints, doing some work on filling in gaps and spaces and other things in a print, or just getting a print painted, or whatever you decide to do. Now, when going out there, if for whatever reason you do click on supplies and it doesn't show any of the actual products, please turn off your ad blocking software. I've noticed that AdBlock Plus, for whatever reason, it thinks all of those are spam ads, and they generally are not. It's always nice to not be overloaded with banner ads and other junk like that on a website, and we don't use that stuff, at least not at this point. We just go straight from patron funding and from purchases done through the Amazon affiliates program. So any support you could do, that would be great, and it's totally helpful. And I believe that does it for this week. I'm Joe, and remember, if you can imagine it, you can print it.